All right, thanks everyone for showing up to our panel. This is the Tony Hawk's 25th anniversary. Tomorrow actually is the 25th anniversary of the video game releasing in '99. Woo! Which means everyone up here is old AF. And we'll just kind of keep this pretty loose. We've got some stuff we'll go around, like intros and specific topics, but if there's ever a question that you have, just raise your hand. You can interrupt us, we don't mind, and we'll kind of keep it loose. And then at the end, if there are additional questions, we'll do a full QA with you guys. So yeah, just to get it started, we'll just go around and introduce each other, what games we worked on, and kind of what we're doing now. I'll start it off. That's okay with you guys?
Go for it.
Okay, I'm Ralph D'Amato. I started working at Neversoft in December of '98. It was a couple months before Tony actually signed on to do the video game. I worked on the first one where there was 12 to 13 of us to Project 8. So I worked on 8 of the Tony Hawk video games. And then actually after that, just a little bit of trivia, I went to work for Tony for 4 years as his director of new media, and helped him with proving, his side of the development of Proving Grounds, Ride, and Shred. So yeah, and then currently what I'm doing, I'm director of production at a video game startup. I'm still in the industry making video games. Hopefully the next awesome battle MOBA game that should be coming out in about a year or so. So that's me.
Rausch. Hi. I'm Chris Rausch. I'm a game designer. I've been working in video games for 30 some odd years. I started on Tony Hawk 1 with Neversoft. Worked on 2, 3, 4, both of the Thug games, Wasteland, and I had started my own company by then. We were still working on that stuff with these guys. So yeah, like the first, 8 versions, I think.
Yeah, and most of the fun levels. He designed, yeah. Being a skateboarder himself.
So yeah, all kinds of stuff. I'm still in games. I work for a company called Nicholas. We make a lot of Switch stuff. We do all kinds of different games there. I'm a studio director for them these days. And yeah, there you go.
I'm Darren Thorne. I'm a level artist, and I first interviewed at Neversoft in '98, and they made me a job offer, but there was a startup that I decided it's a better opportunity. So I went over there, and 8 months later, we were bankrupt. So I went back to Neversoft, and they made me another offer, and I said, at that time I got to see the earliest iteration of Tony Hawk in one of the levels, and you could tell right away this game was different, and I got excited about the opportunity, and I took it. And so my timing was lucky, and I worked all the way to Thug, and then me and some of the other guys did Gun, which was a couple years project, and then I came back in to do art direction on Proving Ground. And then I left the company in '07 and left the industry in '07, and been doing other things ever since.
And he's been happy ever since.
No meetings.
Hi, I'm Nolan Nelson, and I actually came on to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 is when I started as a character artist. I remember being at E3 and seeing Tony Hawk, the first version. I'm like, man, I got to get on that game. This is awesome. It's skateboarding. I love skateboarding, music, art, all that kind of stuff. And so I started in 2000 and worked on Tony Hawk 2, 3, all the way to Proving Ground as character artist, and then moved my up to art directing some of that stuff. And then after that, worked on Guitar Hero for the series that we did for Neversoft, and then started to work on a little bit of Call of Duty, and I was like, this is not a fun game. This is a shoot 'em in your face game. This isn't like fun pop culture. So I pulled out of that and still making games now. Working on mobile, actually working with this guy on the end of the table at the moment, at the same place, as the art director there.
Yes, I dragged Nolan into our company. We needed an art director. I didn't really know a better one than Nolan at the time.
But again, it was just like, just that meeting of all 3 of those things. I had to move from Utah, and I was like, move to California. Let's skateboarding games.
And Nolan was one of our Neversoft skaters. If you saw any of the videos, he killed it. Still does. Yes. So the next kind of topic I'll kind of, what's that?
Yes,
Including his knee.
Yeah, including his knee, yeah. Next topic is basically how we each got involved in the Tony Hawk Pro Skater development. I'll go to you first, Rausch.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, just skip it.
So mine was kind of accidental. I worked at a company called Virgin Interactive before Neversoft, and E3 one year. I had been trying to get a skateboarding game off the ground at Virgin for years. I had a pitch and all this other stuff, and some marketing friends that were helping me put together some info, and it kept getting shut down. E3 was in Atlanta in 97, 98, somewhere in there. And I'm in a bar, loudly complaining to a friend of mine about, why would anybody want to play a skate game, of course. That wouldn't be interesting. And handlebar mustache guy shows up like a cartoon character, just at the table. Hey dude, you want to make a skateboarding game? Because we totally want to make a skateboarding game. It was Joel Jewett, he was the owner of Neversoft, and they just all happened to be sitting behind me at the bar. And so I met him that way. It turned out, he was like, you're going to have to move to LA. I don't know if that's a big deal. I said, I already live there. So it's just this big series of coincidences. And they needed somebody who knew skateboarding. So they were excited that I was like a skate guy. And so I went in there. I interviewed on a Saturday. And much like Darren, I didn't take the job at first. I actually was in the middle of making a casino game, a gold nugget game on N64. And I was the lead on that game, and I couldn't leave. So I waited. I read a headline on the internet probably a month later about Activision signing Tony Hawk, and ended up kind of working my way into freedom from that place. Gave Joel a call. He brought me in on a I think I was unemployed for a Friday, 3-day weekend, and started at Neversoft on Monday, and
Yeah.
everything was awesome. And then hit the ground running there. But yeah, it was all kind of a happens, chance.
Yeah, and Chris tapped into something that was a little bit different in the video game industry back then as opposed to now, which was if you were if you were working on a game, you could not leave that game. You were kind of bound to it, and if you did try to leave it, it was sort of a red mark against you, and you may not get another job in the industry. So you kind of had to stick with that game until it was done. And even companies might not even hire you knowing that you were on another game, which is a bit different today, where you can kind of, people come and go as they please, and it's not any kind of negative thing. So, yeah. Darren?
Yeah, so I guess my start at Neversoft, when I started in on Tony Hawk, the game was pretty basic at that point, but there was one warehouse level that was kind of built up, and that's what they showed me at the interview. And I looked at the scene in there, and the way that the game was being played, I just could tell they were using the environment. And I'd been doing 3D games for a while, and the environment was always kind of secondary to the weapons and the people and everything. And in this game, right away I could see, well, they're playing on the level. And so for me, as someone who's into architecture and into 3D modeling and artwork, it was just like kind of perfect. So when I started there, I don't know who I worked with first. I did the downhill jam, I guess was the first thing I did. So yeah, like 2 days on the job, I made a porta potty for my first test.
What'd you do? I made a porta potty.
To learn the tools, I made this porta potty, and then it passed. People like the toilet. So they liked the toilet. So then they just said, okay, here's this downhill course we're working on. Here you go. And I just started texturing it, and that was just hit the ground running kind of time. And so I started, I think February is when I interviewed. I was there at the beginning of March, and we essentially made that game, really produced that game between March and September of that year.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty crazy. All the places I had ever worked, it would take you 3 years to fail at something like that. So it was an amazing group of guys that's what I think I liked the most about the first year there, was that everybody was just so into doing this game and being really good when it was done. Trying to make a AAA game, even though we didn't have the track record of having done it. We all felt we could do it, I think, that we could make a great game. So anyway, that was my start with the company.
I was kind of talking before about seeing the game at E3, and then pretty much I I was working on this project at, this is 1999, I think, I was working on this game called Interstate 82. And there was this guy that was working there, his name was Patrick Sharpenay, and he told me about this job that they were looking for a character artist at Neversoft, because his friend Silvio, who was the art director back there, or the lead artist back there, and told me about this job, and I was just like, I gotta apply for this like right now. And so I applied for the job. I moved out to California, and it was just kind of like a no-brainer of why I wanted to start there. So it's not not as exciting as theirs, because I was already like, I'm already sold. Give me it, because I just love the whole skateboarding aspect.
You want to tell them about the one question Joel asked you, the qualification?
Oh, yeah, this is back when they don't ask you these things anymore. He asked me, because I lived in Utah, I guess, because there's lots of Mormons there. He's like, hey, do you drink? And I was like, yeah, well, yeah.
Yes, you passed.
Back in the old days, I guess. So, but yeah, and like Darren said, a lot of why the success of Tony Hawk was because we just had this group of people that were so passionate about working on this game that we wanted to make it the best, and it was fun. It was like, and,
My origin story is a little bit different because, and I'll date myself a bit. Basically, before PlayStation, you didn't really need a producer as much because games were made with very few people. Sometimes one person, sometimes three people, and if you need somebody to manage three people, you got big problems. So I was I graduated from college with a degree in business and was in sales, but I did it the old-fashioned way. I knew Joel, the handlebar mustache president of our company. He was my ex-brother-in-law's best friend, so I knew him quite a bit. He would tell me all these stories, pretty much nightmare stories about his company, Neversoft, because there was a lot of ups and downs. And then he eventually, Neversoft got a job with Activision to do this game called Apocalypse. They really kicked ass on that game. So Activision then gave them 2 more titles. One was going to be the very first 3D Spider-Man game. And yeah, it's a great game. And then the second was what Joel told me was this little skateboarding game that we're doing. Since I had no...
The other game.
Yeah, the other game. Yeah. I really got the position because the lead, basically programmer, technical director, Mick West, who's sort of the brains behind the entire series. I invited him here. He couldn't make it, unfortunately. He was also the guy that handled all the IT, and I was qualified to do that. I could make, I could build computers, I could rebuild computers, I could run networks. And so Mick didn't want a producer. He didn't think you needed a producer. You made a list of things to do, and then you did them, according to Mick. So I got in basically because Mick quizzed me not on my production skills or management skills, but 100% on computer skills. He gave me a bunch of trick questions, and I answered them all properly. And he saw it as an opportunity to get rid of that work and hand it off to me. So that I spent the day with Neversoft. The next day, Joe called me up and said, "Hey, Mick likes you. You want a job?" And I was like, "Yeah, definitely." So I switched careers and started working at Neversoft and was completely over my head. I had no idea what I was doing, but still don't. Just wing it, and then and just learned as I went. Learned a lot from Mick, and then we also brought another producer in from Activision, Scott Pease, who was seasoned producer in the Activision publishing. And just learned the job on the ground and kind of just stuck with it for 8 years. So that was kind of how I got involved. So knowing people and keeping in touch with people is pretty much the easiest way. I mean, it's how he got a job with our company, right?
It's not a talent
I gave
thing
you
at all.
that favor. Yeah, that was it. It was just a big favor, not talent. Having talent obviously is super important, but if you know somebody, it's kind of helps you get in the door a little easier. All right, so we can move on to the next thing is kind of like what our most proud accomplishments are or were in the Tony Hawk series. And I can kick it off on this one pretty simply. I think the most proud accomplishment for me, and I think a lot of people on this series, was there was a video game magazine, was it PS, what was it, the Sony, that where all the sales were listed? The PXM or PSM?
something like
Yeah.
that.
And every month you would see what the sales were and who was number one and who was number two. And when Tony Hawk 1 was out, it stuck at number one for quite a while. And then we brought out Tony Hawk 2. And there were a few months where Tony Hawk 2 was number one and Tony Hawk 1 was number two. So we had taken the number one and number two most popular video game spots for several months. And it was just like, it was crazy because none of us in the team ever thought that there was going to be this, this big boom. I mean, I think we all were working on the game just primarily to make a good game, make it, you make the skaters happy, make Tony happy, make Muska, all these guys happy that they were proud of what we were doing, and then really sell enough that we could make another game and stay working. That was really the emphasis of what we wanted to do. But when we captured number one and number two spot, it was like, wow, we got something, we got magic in a bottle here, and we want to keep going with it. So that was my most proud. What about you?
Wow. A whole bunch of stuff. So at my previous company, I had met a guy who started doing music videos for bands. And we were working with, I worked with him on some stuff. We were working with a label called Mojo Records. We did music videos for bands like Real Big Fish and some other stuff like that. And another one of my favorite bands, Goldfinger, had a new record coming out. And so I brought in my CD and I laid out the Superman track, and while we were all in our soundtrack meetings every week, and that song became an anthem, so I was pretty stoked that I brought that one to the table. Among others, yeah. I still have, at my house, I still have all of my CD collection, which now just lays dormant, but they all have, I have a whole bunch of them, Vandals and Suicide Machines, and all kinds of bands, with Post-its on them. With the track numbers that I needed to submit for the meetings and everything. So they're still stuck on there. These are the best Post-its I've ever had.
And just a side note, on this panel, you have 3/5 of the soundtrack team. So Nolan did most of the, if you've liked any of the thrash metal kind of stuff, that was Nolan. Any of the punk stuff was Chris Rausch. I brought in a bunch of like rock and reggae and any kind of eclectic stuff. And then there was Aaron Skillman, who is an artist who handled all of our hip hop. And then Joel would come out with a lot of classic rock stuff. So
Joel kept asking for the bands that cost $50,000.
Yeah. AC/DC, man. We need AC/DC. Yeah. So yeah, you have 3/5 of the music team on this panel. So if you got questions about the music stuff, more than happy to answer. Go ahead, Darren.
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer for me, I guess. For me, what I like the most and what I'm most proud of is just continuing to improve my skill set and the games that I worked on the whole time I was there, and just growing a team that kept getting better. When you're in the industry for a long time, you work on teams that people come and go, they do the 2 years, and so they can get a raise, they'll go to another company every 2 years kind of business. That was really popular back then. But our guys, once we had this great game, nobody lost focus of making it better every single time. And so I guess what I'm most proud of is just finding ways to, from my end anyway, to make the levels look as good as they possibly could in 8 months, 9 months, over and over again. Because the deadline aspect of the game for all of us was crazy compared to any studio I've ever worked at anyway. And I think to be able to put out top quality games over and over again for that many years and be a big part of it, for me, that's my proudest part of working on the Tony games.
Yeah, and to kind of step on that a little bit, we did have an 8-9 month development cycle for each game, where he had to design new levels, he had to art new levels, he had to make new characters and create a skater parts and all the new tricks, everything in 9 months. And it was 9 months and it was a disc with no internet updates. So there was no such thing as internet bug fixing. Bug fixing, if you had very big bugs, they ripped your discs off the shelf and you had to reprint, and that was a massive cost. And we never had to go through that.
No, yeah, just the concept of having to make something clean the first time out.
Yeah. There was no way we didn't even have a massive QA team. We all individually QA'd our own stuff. We all brought the game home on weekends. We had a thing called hardcore hours, which these guys all cringe. But hardcore hours basically meant whatever time you came in the AM, you could leave in the PM. So if you came in at 9 a.m., minimum you could leave at 9 p.m. And if you left,
which you wouldn't
and that's easy. If you left at 9 p.m., you got all kinds of grief for it.
Oh my
We would just stay.
So you could. That was the rule. You could. But if you actually left in 12 hours, it was shunned upon. And there were days where we slept at the office, where we made builds at 3 and 4 in the morning, and we were burning DVDs sometimes at single speed. So you can kind of imagine. I did a lot of the building and burning, and I would put tape around the build machine because I didn't want people to even walk by it. Because if somebody walked by it and it skipped and it failed, then you had to start over. It was another 3-4 hours.
That's right.
And then we had to get it to Activision.
Yeah, and then we had to get
Right
it. We had to
away.
get a courier because you're not going to send it over the internet because you had
So we had a guy.
crappy. So you got a courier at 3 o'clock in the morning to come and pick up the disc and then bring it to Activision, and then we would FedEx discs to Tony and all the other skaters. So it was a different beast than it is today, for sure.
No. Let's see. My proudest moment is probably just because when I started, the whole creative skater system was just kind of starting to formulate, and I felt like that was part of my job because we had 2 character artists at that point. One guy was working on some of the pros, I worked on some of the pros, but I was in charge of the creative skater, and that was a lot of fun to make, obviously, because you're making pants, shoes, all sorts of different things, and I just felt like that was my proudest moment, just really pushing that to its level.
Did the pros come up to you asking if you could not put certain stuff on them? Because I know in some of the games you can't put hats on Chad Muska and stuff. Were they pretty adamant about that?
Yeah, some were a little bit more adamant than the other.
Yeah, they would come in their outfits that they wanted so that we could photograph them and get it
Chad even brought his beatbox.
Yeah.
Chad brought his
And if
own.
there were things they didn't want to be in, then we would, you wouldn't be able to put it in on them.
And some cared more about their characters too. Like I remember sitting with Jamie Thomas for probably 2 hours, just making sure his outfit was just
so that his
perfect.
t-shirt and
His
jeans.
t-shirts are
Yeah, his t-shirt and jeans.
Right wrinkles.
But that
He was amazing.
Yeah, but he was
He was
amazing.
great.
But that was just to kind of show with some of these athletes where they really want to make sure that they're because some of the skaters realize a little bit more than others how important this thing was. That they were just like, well, I'm just getting so much exposure, so I need to make sure that I'm keeping consistent.
That became
their branding.
their brand in real
yeah.
life.
So that was
Yeah. I mean, even Steve Caballero was one of those guys that really recognized it. And I can't remember which game it was. I think it was in 3. He had a Red Dragon, which was a apparel. I think it still is a
Red
apparel brand. Jacket that he had on, and the actual jacket had the logo in the front, and he realized, well, nobody's going to see the logo in the front, I'm going to put the logo in the back. And it got to a point where Red Dragon was getting asked to make that jacket, and they had to actually start producing the jacket with the logo on the back because that's the way it was in the game. And he plays it down a little bit, but I kind of feel that the Creative Skater stuff was really the origins of skins that you have today, where we gave you, for $60, you got full access to everything. You could do, and some of the things I would help, I was production on some of it, so I would help with spreadsheets of every single piece. And it was literally hundreds of different pieces that you had access from the get-go to do. So that's now turned into, buy this skin for $10, buy this skin for $10, and that whole.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that?
I know.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Another person we tried to get to come up, his name was Gary Jesdan. I worked hand in hand with the Creative Skater system, and he helped make the system just be.
He was the programmer.
Yeah.
He was the engineer on that, just to make it as solid
so
as
smooth,
possible.
yeah.
Just because that was his only focus, and so that's how we were able to just get this, fun thing. And it's back on Creative Skater, because I just remember when we took all the constraints off of whatever you could do, and you could make your character green. I don't remember which version that was. And people were making like the Hulk and all sorts of crazy characters, right? And us as the artists were like, oh, this looks so crappy. You shouldn't be able to do that. like you're ruining it. Well, you know, then after we're like, you know what, this is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
People can just create whatever the hell they want. And so that was another awesome moment.
Yeah, and then we'd see videos of people like, and they'd send them in with
Yeah.
like bright yellow and green and blue,
Yeah,
and it's just like they love
Yeah, it
it.
was so ugly, but they loved it.
Yeah, they loved it.
So you can't
They
complain.
loved it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think one of the other proud moments for Nolan is probably making a lot of the Secret Skaters.
Oh, that was fun.
Yeah. Even especially the ones that weren't licensed, like the ones that came from his mind, like the creature.
The little creature.
Yeah.
The Iron Maiden one was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It was cool to do that.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun.
Cool. All right. This one kind of goes. This kind of goes along with that, but like your best memory from the series, like whether it's a story, whether it's something that happened, but your best memory in making the series. Like when you think about working at Neversoft, like what kind of stands out for you as far as whether it's in the development, after hour stuff we did, crazy shit that happened, all that good stuff.
Before we get to that question, I want to make sure that Darren can tell me something on the way here about Burnside and just the process that you went to make
Oh,
Burnside. 'Cause
yeah,
that
good
is
talk about
super
that.
Yeah,
awesome.
go ahead.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
perfect Portland story. Oh, go ahead.
So you mentioned Burnside. Is it true that y'all went to Burnside to promote the game and the skaters threw like some of the promotional stuff in the dumpster? I've heard this from people before.
Oh, I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised. To be honest. Yeah. So the one of the original OGs that set that place up, I think his name's like Osage.
Osage Buffalo.
Osage, yeah.
He actually
Osage
he
Buffalo.
actually sued, I think, Activision, and they settled for using a place that he felt like was
It was his baby,
Yeah.
And
I forgot about that.
yeah, it turned
Yeah.
out to be cool, but he was like, "Hey, by the way, man, I spent like years of my life making that place."
Turning this into a masterpiece.
Yeah, and you just made zillions off of it. Like, you know, and so yeah, that was one of those deals.
Yep, I think that was the second level that I worked on with another designer who's not here today, Jason Ueda. He had done some preliminary work, and back in those days, this is '99, and the internet was the internet, but you couldn't get the kind of graphics. You couldn't just go in there and type Burnside Skate Park and see images of it. So we were digging around in the recesses, and we were getting old skate magazines, and some of the guys had videos that
endless videos.
had some shots of guys. So we were having to transcribe from other weird sources that you would just laugh at today, and figure out what the thing actually looked like in 3 dimensions, because we didn't go there.
Yeah,
you know?
at that point we didn't have
We didn't
the
go.
budget to travel there.
And so it was really time consuming, and Jason and I worked on it back and forth, tweaking the size of the eyeball bowl and all this stuff, and getting the outside parking lot area so it would look like you were in the city and all that. And when it was all said and done, it had been exhausting, but I was totally happy with how it came out. So was Jason. We were really proud of that level. But afterwards, I talked to Joel. I said, you know, Joel, if you would have just sent Jason and me up to Portland, you'd have spent $1,000 and we would have been able to just take everything. We would have just been able to see it all, take sketches, take photos. I said, in the future, what do you think about, you know, just when we're doing level design, why not just send the guys? And he's like, yeah, I like that. We're going to do that. So from that point on, we went on reference tests because Joel's that kind of guy. If he hears a good idea, he just, yeah, let's do that. So from that point forward, starting on 2, we would send the crews out, designer and artists. If they were going to Berlin, they flew to Berlin, and they got what was cool in Berlin rather than just guessing from online stuff. And you know, that's one of the things I think that really liberated us as designers and artists, was that we had this palette of reality that we didn't have to just invent everything. We could work with stuff that was real and tangible and cool and made sense, and then add our comedy and our silliness and graffiti to whatever we wanted to do to it, to turn it into something that had a different life. And so anyway, that started with Burnside, it being almost impossible to get all the reference for, and then it turned into a new system that we used.
At some point too, because of that Burnside, Activision got kind of gun shy on building real places.
Buildings, yeah.
Yes.
And so we started having to get permission to go places and
Yeah.
everywhere else, you know.
Which was silly, but
yeah.
it was a lot. They were worried about lawsuits because they didn't want to lose any of the money that they were getting from these games.
And again, this is
the real truth.
This is pre Call of Duty. I mean, Activision was really in a slump before Tony Hawk came and kind of saved it.
Yeah,
It was
absolutely.
looking at going. Activision had gone into BK in the '80s after the whole Atari thing, and it was looking that way again. There was no real big titles, and then the Tony Hawk game came around, and it was massive, and so they were just after a while, they became very, very protective, and I had to deal with a lot of the legal BS.
Yeah, we were shielded.
I was always getting calls from legal on locations and licensing different, it got to a point though, that like some parks, like, what was that skate, like, not
Skate Street?
Skate Street, they were
Street,
really
really
cool with
nice.
us.
Those guys
They were
were
really
great,
cool with
yeah.
us.
It was Skate Lab
Skate
was
Lab.
as well.
You think
What?
Skate Lab?
Skate Lab,
Yeah,
yeah.
Skate Lab.
And then, but there was that, what was it, like Pirates, Skater
Oh,
Island.
Skater
Island,
yeah.
Skater Island, yeah.
We met with them, and they were cool. What was the one in Florida?
Kona.
Kona
Skate
Skate Park. We met with them. They were cool. They saw that they didn't even ask for money. They saw the impact it would have and the influence that it would have on bringing skaters to their park to let us go and do it. There were some trips that were a bit sketchy, like Skatopia, where our guys almost got arrested because the owner was very dicey. But overall, all the trips went really, really well, and these guys brought back tons of great reference material that made life a lot easier in days where you just couldn't look stuff up on the internet and get it. Those reference trips before doing that, it was. You guys spent tons and tons of time, and I think your architect background helped with that. But once you got to go on those trips, it kind of
It
opened
just
up
made
the
it
door.
easier. So much,
Yeah.
and a lot of your textures could come from there, and that we just could manipulate
Yeah.
them to make them usable in the game.
Who are all these weird guys out?
Yeah.
Seeing the city,
People
like,
thought we were
taking
spies,
pictures
you know,
of the
they-
street from 6 inches
Yeah.
away.
You're taking pictures of
we would
bricks.
get
trash can.
we would get images.
Damn trash can. What's in there?
We get images on the
Get trash
server.
can
I'm
experts,
looking
yeah.
through the images on the server. I'm like, okay, there's a weird texture, like some kind of asphalt with
Yeah.
some plastic on it,
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah,
How many
that's,
ways can you make a quarter pipe look like something different?
Yeah, exactly.
Let me show you.
We figured it out. Yeah.
So I'll start off with best memories from the Tony Hawk series. For me, it was our after hours fun that we had. I was a sucky skater, so I did not skate very well. But when I was a kid, I skated just as transportation. I couldn't do any tricks, but I could balance on the board. But Joel was really cool with wanting to push the culture. So anybody that was new at the company, the first thing they got was a free complete. They got to go on CCS Online and pick out what they wanted, their deck, their trucks, their wheels, whatever, and we would get them a complete. And then at least once a month, sometimes even more, he would rent out the entire skate park because we didn't want other skaters seeing us skate.
Well, that was after we blew up a little bit.
Yeah.
Initially,
Yeah.
he built a mini ranch
Yeah,
in his
yard.
backyard,
Yeah,
and we
yard,
all
yeah.
would just spend time in his backyard.
Yeah.
Magazine editor, remember?
Yeah,
Amiga
then-
or whatever his name
Yeah,
was.
and then he had it for 2 or 3 years, and then we disassembled it and moved it to my house.
Cut
And
it
it was in
down.
my backyard
Made it
for
smaller.
another 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And it was great. I mean, that half pipe, both at Joel's and at my place, we used it for sound effects, for grinding on coping, for pumping ramps and everything. We used that half pipe quite a bit. But just renting out an entire skate park and having it all to yourself to screw around, and a couple times Tony actually came out and skated with us, so we could actually say we skated with Tony Hawk. Oh, that's awesome. One of the guys, Jeremy, who was a producer on the project, he actually was a pretty good vert skater, and at one of the places, I think it was
That was the skate street when it moved.
yeah, when it
The new
moved.
one, yeah.
Tony, he did a stall on vert, and Tony aired
He did a
over
rock and
him.
roll,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it was
That's
in one
in
of
the
our.
games.
It's in one of our videos, and that was like the best moment of his life, having Tony Hawk do an air over him. So it, yeah, you got a question back there?
There was this one unused video in the test level for Tony Hawk's Underground where there's a skater that face plants and it says, "Holy mackerel."
Oh,
Yeah, Aaron Camerata.
yeah, so it bounced.
Yeah, that was probably one of the worst bails. Actually, no, we had a couple
No,
more.
what's his name left his teeth?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that was one of our designers. He wanted to be a skater more than anything, and he just wasn't. He didn't have a lot of the ability, but he had the cojones for sure.
And he didn't ease into it.
And he went all out and slammed pretty hard, and you could see like he left this big skid mark of sweat, and his watch goes flying off.
shit.
But we actually had a tester one time that came to. And he wasn't even, I think he was a contractor
Yeah.
that came, it was at Skate Lab.
Skate Lab, yep.
And he ate it and augured his teeth into the pyramid, and you actually saw the teeth marks.
marks.
In
And there was a
in
metal ramp, it wasn't
yeah,
wood.
and he knocked both his front teeth out. Just
Yeah.
boom, knocked them out.
Was his name Cody?
No.
Yeah, I think it was Cody.
Was it Cody?
Was it, I think was that his name?
I can't
We
remember.
gotta figure it out.
I think it's in one of the videos. I think there's.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's in the bathroom and bleeding in the bathroom. And he had to get his teeth redone. He had no insurance, so Joel gave him like a $5,000 video fee for us to use the video in the game. So he got to go and get his
And now he's got a winning smile.
Yeah. He's got a winning, everlasting style. But those were some of the greatest moments. But we had, I mean, Chunki, remember he busted his
Fluid,
ACL.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
We had people.
Jeremy broke his.
Yeah, and I was fine as long as you didn't mess with your wrists, because wrists you need to do this stuff. Like you
Break
have a
whatever you want,
busted
leave your hands
ACL, you can't leave, so I could just get you lunch and keep working. You know, but wrists were important.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot of pretty decent bails, but just that camaraderie. Everybody after work going to a skate park and skating, even if you sucked, it was still fun pushing around and doing different things. That's kind of those moments that we got together as a team. You know, I kind of always felt that we were like a sports team. When the season was on, and the season was the 9 months of us making the game, we were 100% behind the game, and that's what we were doing every day, every morning. We were coming in and working for this project. And then when we got time when we were in submission and we got time to kind of take a breather, we let loose pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, never saw Christmas parties
Yeah,
were
Christmas parties.
infamous. I mean, infamous.
That's, it was work hard, party hard. That was the slogan.
Yeah, that was our
And that's-
slogan, yeah.
And, and to attest, saying that's working out these extra hours was just really just the camaraderie of how excited we were all to work
Yeah,
on
that
this
team,
game.
it was
The
a team.
team was just like, and that's, obviously why, part of the success of why Tony Hawk was so, what it was is because everybody was passionate about
Yeah.
everything,
And it's why we're still, I mean, we're still friends 25, more than this on this panel. There are other guys that we get together with that are friends, long-term friends that we've kept over the years, over 25 years. So it's been a big impact for all of us, I think, for sure.
Yeah,
Definitely.
we ended up working together again.
Yeah, we worked
Another
together
skateboard.
on another skateboard game. There was a game called Endless Skater that's on iOS and Android, and
Yeah, I don't know if it's still there.
I'm not sure if it's still there either. No, not there anymore?
No, it's still
Yeah, it was actually for the Microsoft.
No,
Oh,
you're,
Endless.
you're epic.
I'm epic.
Yeah. It was for Windows 8, right?
Endless.
Started out as
And then
Windows 8.
Microsoft said Windows 8 was going to
Windows
take
8.
over.
Yeah.
It was going to take over iTunes. It was going to be the
Yeah.
biggest thing ever.
Sorry guys.
They were wrong, unfortunately. But yeah, we ended up working on a skateboarding game. I think that Dead Space game we worked on as well. And now he and I are working on a game. Darren's never coming back to the video game industry.
Probably not.
Building house.
Probably not.
Yeah,
You never know.
Darren's building cabins in Alaska.
I think it's interesting that we should maybe, like, when you were talking about the Apocalypse game,
Yep.
now that became Tony
Oh,
Hawk's
yeah.
Pro
That
Skater,
was part of my
and then it was
interview.
Bruce Willis.
Yeah,
Was-
yeah.
My first interview was
So that-
Apocalypse,
Yeah.
Same
Back
thing.
before you would buy engines like Unity or licensed engines like Unity or Unreal, companies would make their own engine, and there was the Neversoft engine, and that was created for, well, first it was MDK, and then Apocalypse, Apocalypse was kind of like a two-stick shooter, third-person shooter with Bruce Willis. He was the main character. And they turned that into Bruce Willis on a skateboard with a gun behind his back, going up and down
That
half
was the
pipe. So
demo,
that's what they showed Tony. The very beginning of it, he saw that and he was like, "I'm sold."
That engine was super impressive too. 'Cause-
Yes.
So I came from a place where we were working on PlayStation games, and
That's all.
when you were debugging or wanted to add or change something, you had to go and compile your game under normal circumstances, and that could take anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes, depending on how decent your engine was. So, like, the iterative process didn't exist. Like you hesitated to do something and just tweak it and then try again, because the time of it would take forever. Neversoft, and Mick was brilliant,
Yeah.
had developed the engine to run through Game Sharks
Yeah.
on retail PlayStations. So our dev kits were retail PlayStations with a Game Shark that he had wired into. And compiling on it was seconds. It was not minutes.
Yeah.
So anytime, and that's critical because like if we made quarter pipe or
Yeah,
with the
Chris
height of
would
a
make
rail
something
or
and then I'd have to texture it and we wanted to see it.
yeah, and that's it. Or it's too tall. It's not
Yeah.
fun. You can't hit it right. So bring it down, recompile. It's only a few seconds, and then
Yeah.
keep going. That was a big deal. I had never seen anything like that.
No.
Yeah.
And it wasn't any PlayStation, it was a chipped PlayStation.
Yeah.
Which I got to know a lot of people because
Yeah.
I was the guy that would go out
Exactly.
and buy the chipped.
Nothing
chipped-
official about the hardware we
Chipped
used early on.
PlayStations,
Not
yeah.
anything.
Yeah, that was a little bit of the dark side of
Yeah.
video game development.
And everything that I had built on previous, like I worked on N64 games, and that was like an SGI machine. It was
Yeah.
like the size of a
Oh, yeah, the
coffee cup,
development kit
small,
was
like,
huge,
end
yeah.
table,
Yeah.
like as a computer.
Yeah.
And this was just, there's a PlayStation, we paid some dude $15 to throw a chip in it, and a retail Game Shark, and you're good to go.
The
Let's
beauty of
do
those
it.
chip things is then we could go home and play all these.
You can play
Copy
all the
games, yeah.
overseas games. and stuff.
Doing
Yeah.
research. We're doing research.
Yeah.
So we're kind of getting to the end of time. I wanted to save time for questions. Yeah, go ahead.
This is kind of off topic, so feel free to put it aside if you want.
Sure.
But Nolan, I think you're the only one in tenure for this. What was it like going from the soundtrack budgets of the Tony Hawk games to like having the billion-dollar franchise with the Guitar Hero and being able to kind of pick and choose? Like, what are you especially proud of licensing, and maybe what was something that hit the cutting room floor that you were kind of disappointed by?
On Tony Hawk?
On Guitar Hero.
Oh, Guitar Hero, that was a whole nother fucking beast. I had nothing to do with that.
I think to tie that together though,
Yeah.
the Tony Hawk games were one of the first that were like
Yeah.
really popular enough to push music that way. Like we
Yeah.
were making bands. We could make you if we put you in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that kind of gave Neversoft credit as being authorities on
Knowing
music
how-
and
how
everything
to-
else. And then that acquisition
Yeah.
happened, and,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
So
Neversoft got the gig.
yeah, in the last. So I was the producer that kind of handled the budgets. We would all get together. We would throw out. We would have these listening parties on CDs, and we would all like pick what tracks we
Napster
thought,
on the first
or
one.
Napster, yeah. And we pick what tracks we thought would be good. I would put them all on a spreadsheet. And then I worked with a guy, Tim Riley at Activision, who would work with all the labels to get the tracks, or at least get the prices. And then based on what our budget was, we would do a little, we can't get that, we can't get that, we can't get that, we can't. And there was always, the emphasis was always on what our lead track was going to be, like Guerrilla Radio, or what the lead track was going to be. And then after that, we would kind of dwindle it down. So the last game I worked on, Project Data, was about a $500,000 budget for soundtrack, which is a decent amount. And the reality was hip hop was the most expensive. That even unknown hip hop artists wanted tons of money. Then classic rock, AC/DC, The Doors, things like that we put in. Frank Sinatra wasn't very cheap.
Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash was a higher one too. And then punk rock was dirt cheap. I mean, you're talking $2,000, $3,000, maybe up to $5,000 for a punk rock track. It was dirt cheap. And I can attest to the effect of the soundtrack. I put and we would get a lot of indie bands. They would send us their CDs. I would listen to them first usually, or give them to him if they're punk, or Aaron Skillman if they're hip hop, or him if they're death metal or whatever. And then we kind of, does this fit or not? And those indies, I would give them a gratis license. So we want to put your song in, we'll put it in for free, you'll get the exposure, we get your track to use. They'd sign the gratis license almost 100% of the time. I put I'm in a band, a band in Orange County, California. It's a little cover band now, but we did put our own tracks out a while back. And I put a song called Sin City in Tony Hawk's Underground 2, and that song now is on Spotify. It's got over 1 million plays. And we're just like a nobody band in Orange County. We play at bars. We play cover songs now once a month. But 1 million plays, we get like whopping $30 a month from Spotify. But we're a no-name band, so it had a huge impact. And if the film I worked on, Pretending I'm a Superman, if you watch that, you'll see all the bands mentioned from Feldy and Goldfinger mention how the soundtrack really had a massive impact on their band. Yeah.
And probably my favorite story of talking about some of them were really expensive, but there was this band called the Hookers, and he worked at a Outback Steakhouse, and he faxed from Outback Steakhouse the approval for us to put their song.
Yeah. My favorite was when Lee Ving from Fear called up, and I got a message from Lisa saying, "There's this guy Lee Ving on the phone. He wants to talk to you, and he wanted his money, which was $2,000." It's like, "When can I pick up my check?" I'm like, "We don't deal with that here. That's Activision. You got to talk to him." But I'll come down right now. I'm like, "I would love to meet you," because Fear was one of those bands that I really liked, anyways. But it was kind of funny. I think I saw a hand over here. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, you mentioned Kona earlier, and that reminded me that in Kona you can talk to the owners of the park, I think, Mr. and Mrs. Ramos, and I was wondering about the production behind that, like whether that was I would like to go in our park, but only if or if that was a thing.
So, yeah, I did Kona, and the artist I worked with on that was a guy named Darren Thorne, and he and I flew out there, and our meeting was with those owners, and they were some of the coolest, nicest people. Fun Florida story. We flew out there, I think we got up in the morning at 6 o'clock, and we went out there. We were supposed to go and do all of our stuff before the park opened, and I think we were there at 7 a.m., and it was already 90 degrees with 1,000,000% humidity. It was miserable. They were super cool, super accommodating. They took us all over the place. They actually took us for a tour, and you'll see this if you look in the very back corner of the park. They took us beyond their fences, and there was this huge homeless encampment in the back of their place. And you could kind of see it through the fences and whatever. And they figured it out one day because all these people were lining up at the fence on the outside in the back to watch people skate. It's out back behind the half-pipe area. So we put that in. That's in the game. If you go in the back and see, there's the tents and all kinds of fun stuff back there. They were super cool. We went out there. There was nobody there. They let us ride. They let us take pictures of everything. I rode that snake run, and it was probably the scariest thing I've ever in my life. And I'm not by any stretch, or wasn't a good skater, but I was decent. I could ride. And then some kid comes through there who's a sponsored local kid, and I think he's maybe 9 years old. And he comes down the snake run at about 100 miles an hour, and then does an air over the backside of the hip of it, and hits the wall on the bowl that's on the other side, and just cruises right away like it's nothing. And I immediately was like, I'm not going to ski. That's it. I'm done. There's no reason to do this.
Back it up. Yeah, back there.
Regarding the impact that the game had on skateboarding itself, I've been a skateboarder for a long, long time. And I remember seeing when the game came out and playing the game and being like, this is impossible. There's stuff in here that no one can do. And then afterwards, a few years down the road, kids will play the game, and then all of a sudden you've got kids going out and doing this stuff that previously was thought impossible. They're like, no, it's not impossible because you can do it in Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Exactly.
You go and do it, and it's like, oh, now I'm going to do a switch, or I'm going to do it, kickflip or whatever, and it's like it sort of changed the whole face of skateboarding. It made all these things that were thought impossible before actually seem possible, and then they would actually do it. What do you guys think about that?
I post a lot of that on my Facebook and message these guys remember when they said you couldn't grind a chain? Remember when they said you couldn't grind around a circular thing?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the kids are doing that now. Remember
I think
that?
the first
Exactly.
example I remember of that was immediately after the game came out was Jamie Thomas. So Jamie Thomas was injured when we made the first game, so he was in the studio constantly, just sitting and helping us with everything else, and adding legitimacy and whatever. We gave him I think a 540 flip as a special trick, and so back then, like 360 flips were still kind of king of the hill for, it's flipping on 2 different axes. And the game came out, and he said that everywhere he went, every demo he would go to and everything else, all the kids were saying, do the 540 flip. And he was like angry about it. He's like, I don't actually do that. But then he would go out, and just him going out to these demos and stuff and trying it was getting everybody excited, because they were like, somewhere in there, like he might make it. And then, I mean, nowadays, like, there's tons of kids that can do a 540 flip. They're doing 540 flip, bigger
Under
spins,
flip,
and
yeah.
they're going nuts
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
And like the ones I like these days are when you shoot like a line or a combo or whatever at a park, and they actually put the old Tony Hawk combo on the scores, and you can see the score and everywhere, the multiplier. That stuff's right.
Yeah, we share that. I'm sure I sent you, you've sent me. I've sent Tony a lot of those videos too, and he'll send stuff over as well. His thing was like, he would be on a mini ramp and people were like, do a 900. It's like, yeah, okay, sure, yeah, absolutely, I'll do it right here. Yeah, but it definitely has progressed. Go ahead, back there.
I heard you have an interesting story about Spider-Man.
Oh,
Spider-Man, yeah.
Remember this suit?
The suit?
Yeah, so we got a suit from Marvel because we were making the Spider-Man game at Neversoft, and we wanted to do Spider-Man as a secret character. And we got a suit from Marvel, and it was actually one of their official Spider-Man suit, like their actual official
Before
suit.
those movies blew
Yeah.
up, and they're just so common.
So we told Tony, hey, it'd be great if you could skate with this suit on and get some footage, get somebody to film it, because we'll use it as one of the unlock videos. And so we sent it, but we told him it's an official suit, so just kind of, be careful, whatever. So we sent it to him, and we got it back, and he told us, hey, you might have a little alteration to it, because the eyes he couldn't really see clearly, so he cut those out. Yeah, and it was kind of we get the suit back, and it's got the eyes cut out, and we're like, oh man, we're so busted. But when we sent the suit back to Marvel, we showed them the footage and the edit, and they were like, "Oh, that's so amazing!" They just kind of wiped the slate clean. So that was kind of easy. But we were sweating it for a little while. It was tense. When we got the suit back, Joel was like pissed. Like, what are we gonna do? Like, just we'll make the edit, send him the edit, show him how cool it is. It definitely wiped the slate clean a little bit. Yeah, back there.
Out of all the games that you guys worked on, do you have a particular soundtrack that is maybe not your favorite, but one that you're kind of most proud of?
I love Thug 2 because my band's song is in it.
I'd have to say for me, because I can't remember which one it was, but this band called High on Fire. When I got that on the soundtrack, I was like, this is.
And
That's when I was just like, life can't get any better than this. I'm working on a skateboarding game. I could be driving my car and be like, oh, what song should I put on Tony Hawk's Pro Skater? Plus, I would just, all that artwork as well. So.
What about that shirt you're wearing?
Oh, yeah, Fu Manchu. All right, we got 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. All of them, I guess, because as a whole, it was really cool to just start feeding in bands that you liked or you had seen or were your favorites, and then the budgets just got bigger and bigger. Like you were talking about that spreadsheet, and I remember
I have those spreadsheets still.
it was like there was a period, I think it was maybe 2, when Rage was the lead.
Yeah.
And it was like the question was, which band do we want to spend $10,000 on? Because everything else was $1,000 or
$2,000,
$2,500, whatever. And then you would have this tier of bands that you needed to spend 10 on. And we're like, okay, well, we're only going to get 1 or 2 of those.
Yeah.
Which ones? And then, beyond that, like those budgets blew up. We could just get whoever we wanted at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And sorry, we talking about this music stuff until like I was saying. So
Yeah,
that's another
Speaking
question.
of budgets, how much was Kiss and all their assets?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I did that level.
Hotter than hell.
Yeah, I did hotter than hell. That was my level.
I think it was a trade-off with them because I don't remember the exact number. I'd have to look at the spreadsheet, but I think it was a trade-off because we had that whole level. We promoted them,
Yeah.
and we put them in as characters. So I think there was I'm getting the high sign back there. I think, I don't remember, but it actually didn't come out that much because we had three tracks of theirs in. We had the level, and it was more of a promotion.
They were on
Yeah,
stage.
yeah. One more. Yeah, go ahead.
Were there any memorable secret skaters that didn't end up making it into the games? That you want to talk about?
Oh, they didn't make it. He just wants the ones that didn't.
Oh, they did. The memorable ones made it in. We had like Jenna's Jameson. Remember when she came in to do her deal?
Yes.
You can't do that
We didn't have any
anymore.
secret. We didn't have any that didn't make
They
it.
pretty
in.
much went in.
We,
They went in. Yeah,
we,
that
we
was
pretty
it.
much decided like, hey, what are these secret characters that we want? You know, and you know, with the Iron Maiden one that we had, you know, I'll go through,
Yeah, Eddie.
you know, with Eddie on that situation. But we would like pick out, okay, now we can basically put whatever secret character we want, and that's when we're like, hey, let's put some unique ones, or hey, let's get these ones from these bands, or
They came
Or,
from
yeah.
Activision licenses.
Yeah, or Activision had a
Yeah,
license. We got
yeah,
Boba
license.
Fett. Yeah, they all
Darth
came
Maul,
through.
All that, yeah. It was
Did
all-
you have one last one?
Yeah, was auto kick off an afterthought mechanic at all? I'd love to know the process behind how y'all developed that. I really would.
There was a few of those, yeah. Like there were mechanics that we were proud of, and some that we weren't. Like I think when the skaters started going about 100 miles an hour, you know, toward Thug,
Yeah.
it just became a thing. Like if you wanted to get off the board, we didn't want it to be like clunky. We wanted it to try to be, you know, more graceful. Yeah, that first one was
Yeah.
a little clunky anyway,
Yeah.
but. That concept just came about so we could explore the rest of the level, or you could sit still somewhere and,
And
just look and
line
see what
something
it was that
up.
you were trying to do.
Yeah, and some people actually in the office played it and liked it that way. So yeah, that was kind of. All right, one last thing I'll leave you with is I did produce a movie called Pretending I'm a Superman, the Tony Hawk video game story. It's on all the streaming networks. It's on pretty much every. Go to thpsfilm.com. I did if you want to buy the DVD, I did a coupon code called Retro. You can go to THPS Film, you could buy the DVD, or if you just want to stream it. But a lot of these things, ins and outs of the video game, we kind of cover it there as well, if you're interested. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and here are a few more videos for you to check out.